Welcome to the Automotive Spice in Practice, Lecture 5. And today we will talk about supporting processes. We will zoom in to the processes like quality assurance, like configuration management, problem resolution, and change request management. First of all, let's check where are the supporting processes located in the overall scope of the automotive spice. You can see that, as we already mentioned, there is a specific block for the supporting processes and that there are some specific processes in the supporting process group which are part of the VDA scope. Those processes are framed with red, like sub 1, quality assurance, sub 8, configuration management, sub 9, problem resolution management, and sub 10, change request management. Today, we will talk about those processes in the VDA scope. Let's go back to interaction of the supporting processes and other process areas like project management and risk management. For example, on this picture, what we can see is that supporting processes like quality assurance, problem resolution management, and change request management are heavily relying on the configuration management, which means that configuration management is giving the basis for some criteria for the work products which are coming from the other areas. Then that supporting process configuration management is also giving the infrastructure and how the tools are looking in the project. Also, you can see here that quality assurance is heavily relying on the problem resolution management as well, because when you have some findings in the measures of the process quality, and when you report them, you need to use problem resolution management to record those non-conformities and to use the tool for the problem resolution management to further adjust and prevent those possible gaps. Also, problem resolution management is also relying in some terms to the change request management. For example, if you have some problem which occurred and which is detected by quality assurance or any kind of project management in the project or test management on the project, you need to perform internal change requests for trying to correct those problems. You can see that basically all of three areas, all of three processes, including configuration management, are connected, as we already mentioned in the previous lecture, with the management process, project management. Let's now map our supporting process quality assurance with ISO 26262 and ISO information security. You can see that Automotive Spice defined quality assurance in the way that this is mandatory process and it is heavily influencing level 2. And it is also part of the VDA scope. In the ISO 26262, there is a mapping with the quality assurance from the Automotive Spice to safety management during the concept phase and the product development. It is also mapped in the way that you have some ASPICE assessments, and in ISO 26262 you will have functional safety assessments. And this is also mandatory process. In the information security, we have policies for information security, review of the policies for information security, separation of development, testing, and operational environment, protection from malware, logging and monitoring, and similar things. It means that quality assurance is not only important process in the automotive space. This is the process which will, as I said in the previous lectures, form other standards like functional safety and information security. Now let's talk about process purpose, outcomes, and work products of the quality assurance process. The purpose of the quality assurance process is to provide an independent and objective assurance that work products and processes comply with predefined provisions and plans, and that non-conformances are resolved and further prevented. This is only the purpose of the quality assurance process, but we have further outcomes which needs to be fulfilled in order to reach the desired quality on the project. The first one is that every quality assurance process needs to have strategy how the quality assurance is performed and how the quality assurance will be maintained and implemented on the project. For that, we will have two work products. One is quality plan and another one is quality criteria. Another outcome is very important and it is called independency. It means that quality assurance must perform independently and objectively without conflict of interest. And it means that quality plan needs to have this chapter explaining how the organization of quality is implemented in the company. Sometimes you can see that project manager is someone who is requesting that quality assurance manager or quality assurance engineer are reporting to him. But this can be done only from the level of reporting what is good or bad on the project. But the real reporting goes to the independent organization like a quality department. Then there is another base practice, which is dealing with non-conformances and how we are maintaining them. Basically, quality manager or person who is involved in the quality assurance process needs to ensure that non-conformances of work product or processes or process activities with the relevant requirements are identified, recorded, communicated, tracked, resolved, and further prevented. For that, we will need communication record, we will need problem record, we will need quality record, review, and corrective action register record. Then we need to ensure that conformances are maintained, not only the non-conformances, but also the conformances. We need to ensure that in the quality assurance process, there is a proper escalation, that authority to the escalation of non-conformances to appropriate levels of management is established. For that, quality manager or quality responsible need to have communication record and problem record, of course, as well corrective action register. The last base practice in the quality assurance process is management commitment. This is maybe the toughest outcome because it is involving also the management, which is then another party in this process. And it means that management ensures that all the escalations which are pulled from the quality side are resolved. This kind of outcome is requiring corrective action register. Since we now know what are the outcomes of the SAP 1 quality assurance process, we can check what are the sequences in the best practices given by the standards are written. For example, the most important inputs for the SAP 1 process is month 3, project management, and SAP 8, configuration management. And those two inputs will help in the quality management, in the quality assurance process to establish the strategy, which is BP1, then to assure quality of the work products, which is BP2, then to assure quality of process activities, BP3, to summarize and communicate quality assurance activities and results, which is part of the base practice 4. Then in the base practice 5, to ensure resolution of non-conformances, and in base practice 6, to implement an escalation mechanism. The outputs of the quality assurance process are PDCA, quality work products, quality criteria, review records, and the quality strategy. And how we can create a quality assurance system. First of all, quality criteria for work product is created, then quality planning is created, then processes are monitored, PDCA cycle is established, and non-conformances are prevented. Now let's check mapping of automotive spice sub 8 configuration management to the ISO 26262. Well, configuration management in automotive spice is also a mandatory process, which is influencing level 2. It is mapped to ISO 26262 almost one by one, because ISO 26262 has configuration management, and it is part of ISO 26262 Chapter 8, Clause 751, and it is also mandatory process. In the other standard, like information security, we have chapters like inventory of assets, ownerships of assets, acceptable use of assets, information classification, backup, control operational software. This is also almost mapping one by one to the configuration management as we know in automotive spice. Now we are talking about process, proposed outcomes, and work products, like we done it for the management process and for the quality assurance. The purpose of the process configuration management is to establish and maintain all processes and project work products and make them available to affected parties. This is bringing us some outcomes, which are that we need to have configuration management strategy, that this configuration management strategy is including the whole life cycle and how a product or service are developed. Then we need to have documentation for that, like documented plan, configuration management plan, or any kind of plan which is describing configuration management strategy. Second outcome is how we are applying those standards. It means that the standards to be applied for the development of the documentation are identified, and that, for example, document guidelines and similar guidelines or code guidelines are established and part of some kind of configuration management strategy. Then there is the documentation identification. It means that documentation to be produced by the process or project is identified. It means that we need to have the work product list, and this is part of the configuration management process. For the fourth outcome, we need to have acceptance record and review record as work products. It means that this outcome is telling us that the content and purpose of all documents is specified, reviewed, and approved. You cannot release any kind of document or any kind of configuration item without having content approved. Then there is a outcome, which is saying that documentation is developed and made available in accordance with identified standards. It means that each document created on the project must follow those standards defined by previous outcome. And on the end, the documentation on the project must be maintained with defined criteria. You can see that basically configuration management system or this process is describing all kind of configuration items which are going through some kind of identification, appliance of the standard, the content approval, documentation maintenance, and similar. Inputs to the configuration management process are project management, and quality assurance. Those inputs are heavily impacting strategy, best practice, which is describing configuration items and how we are identifying configuration items. Then best practice, establishing a configuration management system. Then very important best practice, which is defining branch management, how we are releasing in the base practice 5, how we are controlling baselines in the base practice 6, in the base practice 7, how we are establishing regular reporting and how we are verifying the configuration items in the base practice 8. In the base practice 9, we are defining how storage is managed. The outputs of the configuration management are branches, baselines, configuration items, and artifact list, and of course, configuration strategy. The main point of this process is creation of configuration management system, tools and repositories, criteria for configuration items, naming conventions, access rights, baselines, merge and branching strategy, and revision history are attributes of configuration management. Configuration items are subject of configuration management, version controlled, baselined, organized, and stored. Branches are created for parallel development with same base. Baselines are created for controlling releases. Now we are coming to the next automotive SPICE process, SUP 9. SUP 9 is problem resolution management, and it is also part of the VDA scope. It is also a mandatory process which is influencing project management. There is no mapping with ISO 26262, and there is a mapping with information security. And the mapping is done through the contact with authorities, logging and monitoring, management of information security incidents and improvements. But anyway, even if this ISO 26262 is not mapped in the same way as automotive SPICE, you need to have problem resolution management if you want to maintain automotive SPICE in the right way. The purpose of the problem resolution management process is to ensure that problems are identified, analyzed, managed, and controlled to resolution. Now let's check what are the outcomes. The outcome 1 is that you need to have problem resolution strategy. And for that, you will for sure have some kind of problem management plan. Then you have to have problem labeled somehow. It means that you need to record them and you need to uniquely identify and classify them. Then you need to analyze all kinds of problems which are coming in your system. And it means that you need to find and identify the appropriate solution. Then you need to start problem resolution, and for that you will need problem record for sure. You need to track the problems to the closure, and you need to have the status and trend for problems which are already known on the project. When it comes to the creation of the problem resolution management system, it means that you need to have management of defects, and that management of defects is defined, that all the responsibilities for handling defects are defined, that the urgent resolution are authorized, that you have the prioritization and grouping of defects which are coming, that you need to identify, record, analyze, you need to resolve and track of all the defects. Inputs to this process are management process, quality assurance, and configuration management. There are 9 base practices. First one is strategy. Second, identifying of the problems. Third one is what is the problem status of recorded problems. BP4 is how we are diagnosing the cause and how we are determining the impact of the problem. BP5 is telling us what are the authorized urgent resolution actions. Then we have BP6, which is defining what are the alert notifications and how we can in BP7 finish those problem resolutions. Then there is a BP8, which is telling us how to track problems to the closure, and on the BP9, how we are analyzing the problem trends. As output of this process is burn down defects, then prioritize of defects, then some kind of the reports of the defects, and of course, defect strategy. Now we are coming to the ASPICE sub 10 or change request management. This process area is mandatory and it is heavily influencing month 3 and all other engineering processes, because when change request comes to the V model, to the whole project, you need to implement the whole cycle to really implement all the needs of the change request. Now let's check how it maps to the ISO 26262. Well, there is a change management in the same manner as in automotive SPICE in ISO 26262. And information security, there is also change request management, and that both of the standards are basically describing the same logic. Since your exercise will go through the change request management and how you're implementing it, please try to be careful while you're looking at this process. The purpose of the change request management process is to ensure that change requests are managed, tracked, and implemented. There are a lot of outcomes for this process. The first one is that we need to have the change request strategy. Then the second one is that all the change requests needs to be recorded and of course identified. You can see that the work products there are change management plan and change request itself in some kind of the tool like issue tracking tool. Then there are some kind of identification of dependencies and relationships with other possible areas in the project. Then you need to have the confirmation criteria. You need to have the acceptance that this is really the change request, because not all the changes coming from the customer or any other side are really the change request. You need to have the criteria for detecting such a thing. Then the next step will be how we are analyzing and how we are checking does we have required resources and how we are estimating the change request. Then we need to have the approval and the prioritization of the change request. Of course, there should be the implementation of the change request and that the implementation is tracked to the closure. Of course, the status of the change request must be known, and this is done through the change controller record. As I said in some of the outcomes, it is very important that company has some issue tracking tool or some kind of the change request management tool, which is helping by providing all the fields for analyzing, approving, implementing, and checking the status. And the last thing, but really important, is bidirectional traceability and establishment between change request and all affected work products. Of course, those outcomes must be implemented together, and we will check in the next slide how they are operating together. There are 8 best practices which are necessary for this process. As input, we have management, quality assurance, and of course, problem resolution management. First base practice is that we need to have the strategy. Second one is that change request is identified and recorded. Then the status of the change request is recorded constantly. Then that all the change requests are analyzed and that they are approved. Of course, it is really important that all of the change requests are reviewed and tracked for sure till the closure. And on the end, base practice 8 is defining almost the whole outcome that we need to have established by directional traceability. The outputs of this process are implementation, traceability, and change request strategy. For creation of the change request system, we need to have the tools for change request and issue tracking systems. We need to, as we said, identify, record, and check statuses of the change request. We need to track them till the closure, approve them, and bidirectionally trace them. Since we finished our lecture, please think about what are the minimum processes which are impacted by change request. This will help you in the exercise that I will give you on the live session.